What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everyone's doing well out there. Today we're going to kind of switch things up a little bit here on Fridays. Now, typically I do a trade target show, but we've been getting so many comments about underperforming studs here as of late. I decided to pivot here just a little bit. Now, over the last couple weeks, we've talked to you guys about not overreacting, not doing anything too stupid too soon in this season. Give these guys a little bit of time. So in today's episode, we're going to be highlighting a few of the bigger studs in fantasy football that have started off a little bit slow, looked at their upcoming matchups, and really circled a date, circled a week in which maybe we should start to worry a little bit if they haven't performed by that point. I figured this would kind of give everybody a good visual going in to week 4. Now, obviously, there's going to be some studs that we don't cover in this video. If you have questions about other players, though, don't go down in the comment section and be like, dude totally forgot about so-and-so. No, I didn't. Just leave me a comment down there and I'll try to get you as many responses as I possibly can with kind of what we're looking at going forward, but we're not wasting any more time. We're diving right into the content, and the first player we're talking about is going to be Austin Ekeler. And a lot of people have been concerned about Austin Ekeler and really his lack of scoring here the first few weeks, but it's not so much his involvement in the offense because he's still seeing a lot of targets. It's the lack of touchdowns, right? The touchdowns that we became so accustomed to seeing from Austin Ekeler just have not been there in the beginning of this season. So let's take a look at his upcoming matchups. He's got Houston this week, which is a great matchup. Now you can see the teams are highlighted in either green or red. If they're in green, that means that they allow somewhere in the top 16 the most fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. If they're in red, that means they're in the bottom 16 and allow the fewest points to opposing running backs as of right now. So we can kind of get a snapshot of what to expect coming up. So we see for Austin Ekeler, he's got a great matchup this week against Houston, a little bit more difficult next week against Cleveland. Then he's got Denver, the Seattle Seahawks, and a bye week. Me, personally, I'm circling the Denver game right here. If at the end of this game we haven't started to see him turn it around a little bit, I'm going to start getting worried because he's got two decent matchups here over the next 3 games to really get back on track in this offense, plus gives Justin Herbert a little bit more time to get healthy. If we haven't seen him bounce back by this time, that's when we need to start making some decisions that we'll address at that time. I can't sit here and tell you, hey, in week 6, you need to trade Ekeler for this person, because we just don't know. So much can change between now and then. But with these weekly Friday shows, we should be able to give you a good understanding of maybe what you can get at that time if he is underperforming. How about we go down to the next guy, which is playoff Lenny, regular season Lenny, fat Lenny, whatever you want to call him, Leonard Fournette of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Another guy that maybe we expected a little bit of a hotter start, being that they've been missing so many pass-catching weapons in Tampa Bay. But look at his upcoming schedule. Kansas City, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Carolina, Baltimore. 4 of the 5 upcoming matchups are pretty decent matchups for him against teams that allow somewhere in the top half, the top 16 most fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. Atlanta's kind of like the outlier here, right? You think of Atlanta, you're like, man, that's a great matchup for Leonard Fournette. Atlanta's run defense is way better than its pass defense right now. So on paper, 4 out of the 5 next games looking pretty good for Uncle Lenny. I'm actually just going to circle the last game here, because with all of these matchups coming up, that should give this offense time to really get healthy. Maybe we see Chris Godwin back by then, Julio Jones back by then. We have Mike Evans back this week. Maybe once the offense really gets a handle on where they're going rest of season, even though the offensive line is still pretty banged up, we're really reliant on the pass-catching upside of Leonard Fournette and the touchdowns anyway. We need the playmakers in this offense, and with a good upcoming schedule, I'm nowhere near panicking yet for Leonard Fournette. What about Najee Harris next to the Pittsburgh Steelers? I'm not surprised by the slow-ish start from Najee Harris. We talked about this before the season even started and said, listen, Najee hasn't played this preseason. He dealt with a sprained Lisfranc injury in his foot. I don't know if we're going to get a great outing from him just to start the season. It's a tough upcoming schedule to start the season. He may just start a little bit slow. It's kind of exactly what's going on. But this is where I'm a little bit worried. He's got the Jets this week, which I don't hate, but then he goes back to back to back, Buffalo, Tampa Bay, Miami. That is not exactly a string of great matchups for me. Now, after that, he does have the Philadelphia Eagles, who right now are still vulnerable on the ground, pretty solid through the air. Najee Harris not getting the passing volume this year that we saw him get in years past. He's got a tough upcoming schedule. But the way that they utilize him in this offense, I'm hoping that they continue to grow his amount of touches each week now that he's getting healthier and healthier. I circled the last week here against Philadelphia. If at that point we're not getting anything from Najee Harris, which I don't even want to say that much, because even last week he scored a touchdown, looked a little bit better, but that's where I'm really going to start worrying a little bit. That's a tough schedule that he has upcoming though, so I'm not going to panic too early. How about Dalvin Cook? A lot of people worried about the injury concerns with Dalvin Cook. He's practicing out there. Looks like he's going to be good to go and play. An injury in which he's suffered before, played through, and played pretty freaking well. We talked about this injury last year with him. When he suffered the same injury, he missed a week, but then came back with borderline back-to-back 30-touch games, one in which he rushed for over 200 yards. So we've seen him play with this injury before. His upcoming games, the New Orleans Saints, Chicago Bears, Miami Dolphins, a bye week, and then the Arizona Cardinals. You got 2 decent matchups, 2 bad matchups, and a bye week here. I'm not even close to worried about Dalvin Cook. He's coming off of his 3rd game of the season, in which was his best game of the season. Hated that he got derailed there with this injury. But being that we have some history with this injury, I'm not as concerned maybe as I would be if he suffered something that we'd never seen him go through before. I'm once again just circling the last matchup here against Arizona. If by this point he's not doing a whole lot, then we start to worry. But as of right now, I'm not overly worried about Dalvin Cook. What about Javonte Williams, somebody who we had a lot of concerns about this offseason? A lot of people, once Melvin Gordon was re-signed, said, don't worry about it. Javonte's a stud. He's going to absolutely dominate. And we love Javonte Williams. I have been a huge proponent of Javonte Williams for a year and a half now. But the start to this season hasn't been the greatest for the Denver Broncos. Everybody can kind of agree with that, I believe. But look at the upcoming schedule. We got the Raiders, the Colts, the Chargers, the Jets, and the Jags. Now, honestly, the Jags defense, pretty underrated, in my opinion. The Indianapolis defense still missing Shaquille Leonard, formerly Darius Leonard. If they can get him back in time, they will be improved, but they've kind of underwhelmed to start the season. But he's got great matchups in there against the Las Vegas Raiders, a banged-up defense in LA, and the Jets. And that's where I'm going to circle it right here, is the New York Jets. With 3 good matchups out of the next 4 games, we should get a pretty good idea whether this offense is going to get back on track or if they're going to continue to sputter all year long. That's what I'm circling right there, is the Jets game. What about Alvin Kamara? Somebody who I'm on record as saying that I didn't want this season. I made a video about, players to let your other league mates have, and Kamara was in that video. Not so much just the off-field issues, but we didn't really know what to expect in this offense, right? How was he going to react with Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry and Chris Olave and Taysom Hill, with Jameis Winston coming off the torn ACL? It wasn't just going to be the Alvin Kamara show, so I had my questions. Well, he started off pretty slow. We got a lot of injuries right now, though. Michael Thomas banged up. Jarvis Landry banged up. Taysom Hill banged up. Even Jameis Winston himself pretty banged up, and we haven't seen a whole lot of Alvin Kamara, at least production-wise, right? But look at his upcoming schedule. The Minnesota Vikings, Seattle Seahawks, Cincinnati Bengals, Arizona Cardinals, and Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I'm circling the Cincinnati Bengals game because he's got back-to-back decent matchups against Minnesota and Seattle, and he gets those matchups more than likely with a limited Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, and Taysom Hill. If anything's really going to happen to Alvin Kamara big, it's going to happen when they're really down a lot of their top overall weapons. So if we haven't seen him somewhat bounce back by week 6, then I'm going to start to get a little bit more worried than I already was to start the year with Alvin Kamara. How about we move down to CeeDee Lamb? Now, CeeDee Lamb had himself a pretty solid game last week, right? Cooper Rush starting to fill in pretty well. Not an overly high-scoring offense with Cooper Rush, but he's still moving the ball down the field, protecting the ball. CeeDee Lamb, though, is somebody that a lot of people spent a second-round pick on, and they're expecting bigger numbers, not just one big touchdown. They're looking for that volume in this offense. Pretty solid upcoming schedule as well. The Washington Commandos, Los Angeles Rams, who are definitely easier to throw on than they are to run on. The Philadelphia Eagles, great secondary there right now. The Detroit Lions and Chicago Bears. Honestly, I'm going to circle the Chicago game, but I'm not panicked at all about CeeDee Lamb. He's still putting up decent-ish numbers without his starting quarterback, who is on his way back to the field. We could see Dak Prescott here in the next couple weeks, maybe sooner than a lot of people think, and that's only going to boost the floor and the ceiling right back up for CeeDee Lamb to kind of where we had him pegged in the preseason. I'm not overly worried about CeeDee Lamb whatsoever. What about Deebo Samuel? That's another name that a lot of people asking questions about. Now that we had the quarterback change from Trey Lance to Jimmy G, are we going to see the exact same Deebo as last year? Ish, right? I mean, I don't think opposing defenses are going to be caught off guard this year like they were last year, but look at the upcoming schedule for Deebo Samuel. The Rams, the Panthers, the Falcons, the Chiefs, and the Rams again. Don't love seeing the Rams twice in there, but like I said, they are a little bit easier to throw on than run on. Maybe we see a little bit more of Deebo down the field in those matchups, but with Carolina, Atlanta, and Kansas City there in the middle, this is a perfect opportunity for Deebo to go out there and put a good string of games together. I'm circling the Kansas City Chiefs game because by then we should really have a good idea whether we're seeing a version of 2021 Deebo or if this wide back role just isn't going to quite work out as well as it did a season ago. We'll have a good understanding. I'm not doing anything crazy with Deebo Samuel, though. With the way that this backfield is continually banged up, you know he's going to get rushing opportunities on top of the targets. I'm not overly worried about Deebo Samuel. And then what about Justin Jefferson? I kind of contemplated using him in this show or not, but because he has had now 2 back-to-back total duds of games, I figured I would bring him up here in this game. Did so well in week 1. Technically, I think he's still inside the top 10 or 12 overall wide receivers, but his upcoming schedule isn't exactly easy. He's got the New Orleans Saints, the Chicago Bears, who have played against opposing wide receivers pretty well. He's got Miami, decent matchup. Then a bye week where we'll be without him, and then coming back to the Arizona Cardinals after the bye. You got 3 semi-difficult matchups and a bye week over the next 5 weeks. I'm circling the bye week because we got to give this guy an opportunity to go out there even in difficult matchups in which we've seen him excel in before. It's not like we've never seen Justin Jefferson do good against decent opponents. It's happened since he's entered the league, but by that time we're really going to have a good understanding if this offense is going to be what a lot of people expected it to be with the new coaching staff, the more high-powered offense here. We'll know by the bye week whether or not Justin Jefferson is going to be a top 5 wide receiver or not. He's still going to have value, which is great because he's still going to put up numbers. It may just not be as consistent as maybe we were hoping. We need a couple big games in there because if we see him struggling at this point, we know that that may be a time where we need to sell high if he's had a couple good games or not, but just something to pay attention to. And like I said, there's other studs that I wanted to include in this video, but you can really kind of take this information and apply it to anyone that you want that's in your league that maybe you have questions about. Just look at their next 5 games. Look at those matchups and see how many fantasy points allowed are those defenses giving up to the player that you're looking at. Find a date in which you feel comfortable with, really waiting to say, you know what, this is my drop dead date. This is where I'm really going to figure it out or not, whether I'm holding on to this guy for the long haul, or I'm going to try to find something else to better my team in the short run to get myself into the playoffs to begin with. Because I can tell you this, there's going to be some teams that start off good in your league. They're going to be looking ahead to the playoffs, and they may buy low on some of these studs that you could really capitalize on and maybe give your team enough depth and enough help at multiple positions that may be able to get you into the playoffs. Remember, once the fantasy football playoffs start, anything can happen. The strangest things have happened in the fantasy football playoffs, and all you got to do is get to the dance to have a chance. And that's something we'll keep you guys updated on here every single Friday with these type of videos. I know Kyle has a video coming up as well, trying to, compare this year to the previous years and how are things looking compared to other years, and is this year just an anomaly? Tons of information coming your way. So do me a favor, if you enjoy this type of content, hit that like button. It greatly helps us out here on YouTube, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. We look forward to talking with you down below in the comment section. If you have questions on other players, like I said, throw it down below. This is a very interactive community, and a lot of people who leave comments will also start, conversing back and forth with you as well. And that's what we love to see, is that community type feel here at the Fantasy Headliner. So hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day, a great week. Good luck this weekend, and we'll talk to you later.